What if a tiny island on the edge of the world became the ultimate superpower of learning? What if monks, living in remote stone huts between the 6th and 9th centuries, saved knowledge for everyone? Number 6. Lismore. The ancient world was changing. Empires crumbled, old ways faded, and darkness seemed to creep across Europe. Yet, far out on the western edge, a vibrant light burned in unexpected places. One such place, a beacon of learning and discipline, rose from the banks of the Blackwater River in what is now County Waterford. This was Lismore, a monastic school founded by a man whose very name, Mochuda, carried the weight of strictness and unwavering faith. Mochuda, also known as Karthik, was not just any monk. He was a leader, a scholar, and a figure so dedicated to a rigorous spiritual path that it led to his expulsion from an earlier monastery, Rehan, because his asceticism was simply too intense for even that devout community. This act of being sent away not for misbehavior but for exceeding piety paints a clear picture of the man who would establish Lismore around 636 AD. Lismore was no ordinary monastery. Quickly became a city of monks, a true monastic metropolis, and a magnet for students from across Ireland and even from Britain and the European continent. Imagine a sprawling settlement where thousands of individuals lived, studied, and prayed. Scholars have talked about the sheer scale of Lismore, a place where a community of 3,000 monks and students was not unheard of. This was not a quiet, isolated hermitage in the traditional sense, but rather a bustling hub of intellectual activity. It was a place where different forms of monastic life coexisted. There were the strict monks who followed Mochuda's demanding rule, and then there were the lay scholars, students who came not to join the monastic order, but simply to soak up the immense knowledge offered within its walls. This unique arrangement allowed for a broader intake of students, making Lismore an incredibly accessible place for learning, even for those not destined for a life within the church. Core of Lismore's fame rested on its unwavering commitment to learning and its severe monastic discipline. Mochuda's rule, a set of guidelines for monastic life, was renowned throughout Ireland for its rigor. Demanded extreme self-denial, constant prayer, and a deep dedication to study. This strictness, far from deterring students, actually seemed to attract them. It signaled a place where true intellectual and spiritual growth was taken seriously, where distractions were minimal, and where the pursuit of knowledge was paramount. The curriculum at Lismore was vast and challenging. Students delved deeply into the study of scripture, dissecting biblical texts with meticulous care, mastering the nuances of exegesis. Latin was the language of the church and scholarship, and Lismore students became expert Latinists, copying and composing texts in the language with remarkable fluency. What truly set Lismore apart was its significant emphasis on Greek, a language often neglected in Western Europe during this period. Presence of Greek scholarship at Lismore suggests a connection to broader intellectual currents and a desire to access original philosophical and theological works. Beyond languages, the school offered instruction in a wide array of subjects. Mathematics, astronomy, and chronology were key disciplines, essential for understanding the natural world and for calculating important ecclesiastical dates like Easter. Irish law and history were also central to the curriculum, ensuring that students understood the legal traditions and historical narratives of their own land. Medical studies, too, found a home at Lismore, reflecting a holistic approach to education that encompassed both the spiritual and the practical. The scribble workshops at Lismore were prolific, producing exquisite manuscripts that tokayed the skill and artistry of the monks. While many of Lismore's direct productions have been lost to time or dispersed, the Book of Lismore, though compiled much later, carries the name of the monastery and offers a glimpse into the kind of high-quality Irish script and illumination that the monastery would have fostered. These manuscripts were not just beautiful objects, they were the vessels of knowledge, preserving ancient texts, religious commentaries, and historical records. The careful copying of these works ensured that knowledge was not lost, but instead propagated and passed down through generations. Lismore's strategic location on the Blackwater River, close to the sea, also played a crucial role in its importance. This made it a key port of call for travelers, merchants, and scholars moving between Ireland, Britain, and the European continent. It became a stopping point for Irish peregrini, the wandering monks who sought to spread Christianity and scholarship across Europe, and for foreign scholars seeking the renowned learning of Ireland. One such famous student who passed through Lismore was Saint Columba, who, after his studies, traveled to Italy and became a bishop in Taranto, carrying the intellectual flame of Lismore to distant lands. This constant flow of people and ideas helped Lismore to maintain its intellectual vitality and its international reputation. The stories of these peregrini, their journeys, and the foundations they established across Europe all point back to the profound impact of Irish monastic schools like Lismore. Their commitment to scholarship and evangelism was intertwined, each supporting the other. The daily life at Lismore, especially for those following Mochuda's rule, was arduous. Monks would rise before dawn for communal prayers, followed by long hours of study, transcription, and manual labor. They would live simply, often on meager diets, and their days would be punctuated by regular periods of prayer and contemplation. The intellectual rigor was matched by physical austerity. This demanding lifestyle was believed to purify the soul and sharpen the mind, allowing for a deeper connection to God and a more profound engagement with scholarly pursuits. The focus on intellectual mastery was not separate from spiritual devotion. Rather, they were seen as two sides of the same coin. The acquisition of knowledge was a path to understanding the divine. Despite its initial prosperity and fame, Lismore, like many Irish monasteries, faced immense challenges. The 9th century brought the devastating Viking raids. These attacks often targeted wealthy monasteries, which were repositories of precious metals, valuable manuscripts, and often stood in strategically important locations. Lismore suffered multiple attacks, which undoubtedly led to the destruction of buildings, the loss of priceless manuscripts, and the dispersal of some of its community. However, the legacy of Lismore was too strong to be completely extinguished. It continued to function as a monastic center, though perhaps never regaining its peak size or international dominance. Its influence had already spread far and wide, through the students it trained and the traditions it established. The very existence of such a place, a beacon of learning in a turbulent age, speaks volumes about the dedication of Irish monks to preserving and advancing knowledge. Lismore stands as a testament to an era when an island at the edge of the known world became a powerhouse of scholarship, a place where the light of learning burned brightly, illuminating not just Ireland but casting its glow across the European continent. Danger. Number 5. Durrow. Deep in the heart of what is now County Offaly, nestled amidst ancient forests, a powerful center of learning and spiritual devotion took root. This was Durrow, a monastery founded around 553 AD by one of Ireland's most iconic figures, Saint Columba, or Colm Seal, as he is known in Irish. Columba was a man of immense influence, a formidable figure who moved between worlds of learning, politics, and religious fervor. Durrow was one of his earliest and most significant foundations before he sailed to Iona, the Scottish island from which he would launch his groundbreaking mission to convert the Picts. Durrow was not just a stepping stone. It was a foundational pillar of Columba's monastic network, a place where his unique blend of scholarship, asceticism, and evangelism was deeply ingrained. Durrow quickly became known as a place of immense scholarly output, particularly in the realm of manuscript production. It was here, many scholars believe, that the magnificent Book of Durrow was created in the 7th century. This illuminated manuscript, a masterpiece of insular art, is one of the earliest examples of a decorated gospel book. Its intricate, interlaced patterns, vibrant colors, and detailed evangelist symbols showcase an artistic and scribbled tradition that was not only unique, but also incredibly sophisticated. The creation of such a work required immense skill, countless hours of meticulous labor, and a profound understanding of both art and theology. The scribes of Durrow were not mere copyists. They were artists and theologians who poured their devotion into every line and every page. The Book of Durrow was not just a book. It was a sacred object, a testament to the spiritual and intellectual power of the monastery. Its very existence points to a highly organized scriptorium, a place where many hands work together under skilled guidance to produce works of extraordinary beauty and profound spiritual significance. Curriculum at Durrow, like other major Irish monastic schools, was comprehensive. Students would have spent their days immersed in the study of Scripture, mastering the nuances of the Latin Vulgate and delving into the theological interpretations of early church fathers. The mastery of Latin was fundamental, as it was the language of all scholarly and liturgical texts. While the emphasis might have been slightly different from Lismore, Durrow certainly fostered a strong tradition of linguistic studies, preparing monks to not only read, but also to copy and compose learned treatises. Beyond biblical studies, the monks of Durrow engaged with the liberal arts, known as the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, logic, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, music. These subjects provided a broad intellectual foundation, sharpening critical thinking skills and fostering a deeper understanding of the natural world and its order. The monastic life at Durrow was disciplined, following the rigorous Benedictine tradition, which was adapted by Columba to suit the Irish context. Daily life revolved around prayer, study, and manual labor. Monks were expected to cultivate both their minds and the land, ensuring the self-sufficiency of the community. Durrow's connection to Columba made it a key center for the spread of his monastic rule and influence. Monks trained at Durrow often went on to found new monasteries or to serve in other foundations within the Columban network. This created a powerful intellectual and spiritual lineage that extended far beyond the monastery's physical walls. The very ideals of Columban monasticism, a blend of fierce asceticism, deep scholarship, and a passionate missionary spirit, were nurtured and perfected at Durrow. Students who left Durrow carried these ideals with them, establishing new outposts of learning and faith throughout Ireland and into Britain. The monastery thus served as a vital intellectual powerhouse, disseminating knowledge and spiritual practices throughout the region. The importance of Durrow is also evident in its rich historical record. The Annals of Ulster, a crucial medieval Irish chronicle, frequently mentions Durrow, recording the deaths of its abbots, significant events, and periods of both prosperity and adversity. These historical entries confirm its ongoing prominence in the Irish ecclesiastical landscape for many centuries. Continuity of its abbacy, often through powerful families, speaks to its enduring political and spiritual power. The monastery was a landowner, a spiritual authority, and a significant economic force in the region. Its strategic location also made it vulnerable to external threats, and like many prominent monasteries in Ireland, Durrow suffered from Viking raids in the 9th and 10th centuries. These attacks would have caused destruction, the loss of manuscripts, and disruption to the monastic routine. Despite these setbacks, the monastery persevered, a testament to the resilience of the community and the deep roots it had established. Archaeological evidence at Durrow, though limited, suggests a large and complex monastic enclosure, encompassing churches, workshops, living quarters, and perhaps even early educational buildings. Presence of high crosses, like the magnificent Durrow cross, further underlines the monastery's artistic and religious significance. These stone crosses, intricately carved with biblical scenes and decorative motifs, served as focal points for prayer and instruction, acting as outdoor pulpits or visual aids for teaching the illiterate. They are powerful reminders of the enduring presence of these monastic communities. Long after the initial fervor of their foundation, the spiritual landscape around Durrow was shaped by its monastic presence. Pilgrims would have journeyed to the monastery seeking spiritual guidance, healing, or simply the presence of a sacred place. The tales and legends associated with Columba and Durrow, passed down through generations, further cemented its place in the collective memory of the Irish people. Durrow, therefore, was not merely a school or a church. It was a living, breathing center of culture, faith, and intellect, a place where the light of learning shone brightly, even in challenging times. Its legacy, particularly through the Book of Durrow, continues to speak volumes about the artistic and intellectual achievements of early medieval Ireland. Number 4. Bangor. On the northeastern coast of Ireland, nestled beside the tranquil waters of Belfast Lough, once stood a monastic school of truly enormous proportions and international renown. This was Bangor, founded around 558 AD by Saint Columba, a man whose name would become synonymous with severe discipline and an almost overwhelming drive for evangelism. Bangor was not just a monastery. It was a monastic city, a powerhouse of prayer, study, and missionary zeal that would send its students and ideals far across Europe. Bangor's reputation as a center of severe asceticism was legendary. The Antiphonary of Bangor, a 7th century liturgical manuscript from the monastery, includes hymns and prayers that speak to the intense devotion and rigorous spiritual practices of the community, describes the monks as living a life of constant prayer, fasting, and self-denial, a discipline that instilled immense mental and spiritual fortitude. This strictness, far from being a deterrent, attracted thousands of monks and students. Historical accounts suggest that Bangor housed a community of several thousand individuals, making it one of the largest monastic settlements in Ireland and indeed in Western Europe at the time. This massive population was not just a collection of individuals. It was a highly organized and disciplined community dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and spiritual perfection. The curriculum at Bangor was comprehensive, focusing on the core subjects necessary for religious life and scholarship. Scripture was paramount, with extensive study of the Bible commentaries and theological treatises. Latin was the language of instruction and scholarship, and the monks of Bangor were renowned for their mastery of it, evidenced by the Latin texts they produced. While specific details about other subjects like Greek or sciences are less explicit than for some other schools, the intellectual rigor implied by their missionary success suggests a robust education in rhetoric, logic, and possibly arithmetic, all essential for theological debate. The daily life at Bangor was meticulously structured, revolving around cycles of communal prayer, private contemplation, study in the scriptorium, and manual labor. The monks were expected to be self-sufficient, cultivating their own food and producing their own necessities. This blend of intellectual and manual work was a cornerstone of early Irish monasticism. What truly set Bangor apart, however, was its astonishing output of missionaries. It became a spiritual and intellectual launching pad for some of the most influential figures in early medieval European history. The most famous of these was Saint Columbanus. Columbanus, a brilliant and fiercely independent scholar, departed Bangor around 590 AD with a small group of companions, including Saint Gall, and embarked on an extraordinary mission across the European continent. They established numerous monasteries, including Annigray, Luxeuil, and Bobbio, which became centers of Irish learning and monastic practice in Gaul, Burgundy, and Italy. Columbanus carried the Bangor tradition with him. Its rigorous rule, its commitment to scholarship, and its fiery, evangelistic spirit. His monasteries, founded directly from Bangor's influence, became vital hubs for the preservation and dissemination of classical and Christian knowledge in a Europe that was struggling to retain its intellectual heritage. The rule of Saint Columbanus emphasized severe asceticism, regular confession, and strict obedience, mirroring the practices of Bangor. The influence of Bangor was not limited to Columbanus. Many other Bangor-trained monks traveled across Britain and Europe, establishing schools, copying manuscripts, and spreading the distinct flavor of Irish monasticism. These peregrini, or wanderers for Christ, were driven by a desire to spread the gospel and to live lives of extreme piety in foreign lands. They brought with them not only their faith, but also their books, their learning, and their scribble skills. The libraries of monasteries like Bobbio, founded by Columbanus, were rich in works copied by Irish hands, preserving texts that might otherwise have been lost during the turbulent early medieval period. Historians often speak of the Irish mission, or the Irish intellectual diaspora, of this period, and Bangor was arguably its most important origin point. It was a factory of saints and scholars, each carrying a piece of Bangor's intellectual and spiritual light to new frontiers. The antiphonary of Bangor itself is a testament to the monastery's liturgical and scholarly sophistication. Its contents offer a direct window into the prayers, hymns, and spiritual aspirations of the Bangor community. Its careful calligraphy and decoration indicate a high level of scribble art. The antiphonary is one of the most important surviving manuscripts from early medieval Ireland, providing invaluable insights into the daily life and spiritual practices of these monks. It underlines the fact that Bangor was not just a place of training for missionaries, but also a center of profound theological and liturgical creativity. Like other major monastic centers, Bangor was not immune to the challenges of the age. The 9th century brought the devastating Viking raids, which frequently targeted coastal monasteries like Bangor. These attacks, often violent and destructive, led to the pillaging of monastic wealth, the destruction of buildings, and the loss of countless manuscripts. The annals of Ulster and other Irish chronicles record multiple Viking attacks on Bangor. These events would have severely disrupted the life of the monastery, leading to periods of decline and rebuilding. However, Bangor, like other resilient Irish monasteries, often managed to recover, sometimes with reduced influence, but still continuing its monastic tradition. The sheer dedication of the monks, their commitment to their faith, and their learning allowed these communities to endure through centuries of upheaval. Bangor's legacy extends far beyond its physical remains, which are now largely archaeological. It is remembered as a wellspring of missionary activity, a place where thousands of individuals were shaped by intense spiritual and intellectual discipline, and then sent forth to re-evangelize and re-educate a continent. The influence of Bangor-trained monks helped to preserve classical learning, foster new intellectual centers, and shape the very course of Christian Europe. Its story is a powerful reminder that some of the greatest movements of history can originate from what might seem like remote and unlikely corners of the world. Bangor truly was a giant of the early medieval Irish monastic world, a silent force that helped reshape the intellectual landscape of Europe. Number 3. Armagh. The very heart of Ireland's spiritual and intellectual landscape, a towering monastic and ecclesiastical center emerged, claiming a unique and powerful authority. This was Armagh, the primatial see of Ireland, inextricably linked to the legacy of St. Patrick himself. Founded in 444 AD, though its monastic school reached its peak influence much later, Armagh stood not just as a place of learning, but as the spiritual capital of the entire island. Its story is one of enduring power, scholarly excellence, and a persistent claim to supremacy over all other Irish churches. Armagh's prestige derived directly from its association with St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. The monastery actively promoted the cult of Patrick, asserting that it was his original foundation and therefore the rightful spiritual head of the Irish Church. This claim was codified in various texts, most notably the Collectio Canonum Hibernensis, Irish collection of canons, and the Book of Armagh. The Book of Armagh, a truly magnificent 9th century manuscript, is a powerful testament to the monastery's scholarly and political ambitions. It contains not only a complete New Testament but also important patrician documents, including the Confessio of St. Patrick and 2 Latin lives of Patrick. These texts were meticulously copied and preserved at Armagh, solidifying its claims to apostolic succession. The scribes who produced the Book of Armagh were masters of their craft, prodding the highest level of artistic and calligraphic skill. This book was not just a religious text. It was a political statement asserting Armagh's primacy through the very act of its creation and preservation. As the leading church in Ireland, Armagh became a major center for legal studies, particularly canon law. Collectio Canonum Hibernensis, an important collection of ecclesiastical laws, was compiled in Ireland during this period and certainly influenced by, if not directly produced at Armagh. This legal expertise was crucial for governing the sprawling Irish church and for resolving disputes between various monastic communities. The abbots of Armagh were often powerful political figures, mediating conflicts and asserting their authority over other monastic settlements. The school at Armagh educated not only monks, but also secular clergy and aspiring church leaders, providing them with a comprehensive understanding of Christian doctrine, liturgy, and ecclesiastical governance. The curriculum at Armagh was extensive and multifaceted. Beyond theology and canon law, students delved deeply into biblical studies, often engaging with a complex exegetical tradition that incorporated both Latin and, to some extent, Greek sources. Presence of Greek scholars and texts, or at least an awareness of them, suggests a broad intellectual horizon. Latin grammar and rhetoric were fundamental, essential for composing theological treatises, legal documents, and official correspondence. History, particularly Irish history and the history of the early church, was also a significant subject, as it helped to legitimize Armagh's claims to primacy and to understand the unfolding narrative of salvation. The scholars of Armagh also engaged with subjects like computation and chronology, critical for calculating the date of Easter, a contentious issue in the early Irish church. Armagh's influence extended far beyond its role as a spiritual and intellectual hub. It was a pilgrimage destination of immense importance. Devotees from across Ireland traveled to Armagh, seeking spiritual solace, healing, and connection to St. Patrick's legacy. This constant flow of pilgrims and visitors further cemented Armagh's status and brought wealth and resources to the monastery. The city of Armagh itself grew around the monastic complex, becoming a thriving urban center, a rarity in early medieval Ireland, which was largely rural. The sheer size and wealth of Armagh made it a prime target for Viking raids. From the early 9th century onwards, the annals of Ulster record frequent and devastating attacks on Armagh. These raids caused significant destruction, the plundering of treasures, and the disruption of monastic life. Despite these repeated assaults, Armagh proved incredibly resilient, repeatedly rebuilding and reasserting its authority. This resilience speaks to the deep-seated power and importance of the institution. The abbots of Armagh, often members of powerful local dynasties, wielded considerable secular as well as ecclesiastical power, allowing them to withstand challenges and maintain their position. The very physical layout of Armagh likely reflected its status. While much of the early medieval monastic settlement has been lost to later developments, archaeological evidence points to a large, complex enclosure with multiple churches, living quarters, workshops, and perhaps even early educational buildings. Presence of numerous high crosses and other stone monuments in the vicinity further shows its importance as a place of veneration and artistic expression. These crosses, often richly carved with biblical scenes and intricate designs, served as powerful visual aids for religious instruction and as markers of sacred space. Armagh also played a crucial role in the development of Irish literacy, and the preservation of the Irish language. While Latin was the language of the church and scholarship, the scribes at Armagh were also instrumental in preserving and recording early Irish texts, including historical narratives and legal tracts. Their bilingual skills allowed them to bridge the gap between the learned Latin tradition and the vibrant vernacular culture of Ireland. The Annals of Ulster, largely compiled in Armagh or under its influence, are an invaluable source for Irish history and contain many entries in the Irish language alongside Latin. The continued existence of such chronicles demonstrates the commitment of the Armagh scholars to documenting their own history and maintaining a strong sense of cultural identity alongside their Christian faith. In many ways, Armagh was the administrative and intellectual heart of early medieval Ireland. Claim to the patrician legacy provided an unshakable foundation for its authority, allowing it to navigate the complexities of Irish society, assert its ecclesiastical supremacy, and foster a rigorous intellectual tradition. It was a place where theology, law, history, and art converged, creating a unique synthesis of spiritual power and intellectual achievement. The Book of Armagh remains a tangible symbol of this legacy, a masterpiece that eloquently speaks to the scholarly ambitions and artistic skill of the monks who called this powerful center home. Armagh truly stands as a testament to the enduring power of a monastic school that was deeply intertwined with the very fabric of Irish identity and spiritual life. Number 2. Clonmacnoise. On a gentle ridge overlooking the majestic River Shannon in the heart of Ireland, a monastic school of unparalleled fame and lasting influence flourished for centuries. This was Clonmacnoise, founded around 544 AD by Saint Ciaran, a young man of remarkable piety and intellect who sadly died very early in the monastery's history. Despite Ciaran's brief life, the legacy of Clonmacnoise, meaning Meadow of the Sons of Naas, grew to become one of the most prominent and powerful monastic centers in all of Ireland, a true university of its age attracting students and scholars from across the Celtic world and beyond. Clonmacnoise became renowned as a hub of learning, pilgrimage, and historical record-keeping. Its strategic location on the Shannon, Ireland's longest river, made it incredibly accessible, allowing for easy travel by boat and fostering connections with diverse regions. This accessibility contributed significantly to its popularity and influence. It became a powerful economic center, controlling extensive lands and wealth and attracting merchants, craftsmen, and pilgrims. The physical remains of Clonmacnoise today, with its impressive collection of high crosses, round towers, and ruined churches, speak volumes about its past grandeur and its enduring significance. The intellectual life at Clonmacnoise was vibrant and comprehensive. The monastery was particularly famous for its scriptorium, which produced a phenomenal number of manuscripts, making it one of the most prolific centers of book production in early medieval Ireland. Clonmacnoise scholars were masters of Latin and Irish, excelling in biblical studies, theology, history, chronology, and the liberal arts. They were especially known for their work on Irish history and law. The Annals of Clonmacnoise and the Annals of Tigernach, though later compilations, are direct descendants of the rich historical tradition cultivated at Clonmacnoise. The monastery's annalists meticulously recorded events, providing invaluable insights into the political, social, and ecclesiastical history of Ireland from the earliest times. These chronicles were not mere dry lists of facts. They often contained narratives, genealogies, and the obituaries of significant figures, painting a vivid picture of the age. The ability to maintain such extensive historical records over centuries speaks to an organized and dedicated scholarly community. The school at Clonmacnoise attracted a diverse range of students. Not only did monks pursue their studies there, but also lay scholars, poets, and even members of royal families came to be educated. Curriculum encompassed all the known fields of knowledge of the time, Students would delve into the complexities of biblical exegesis, mastering theological arguments and commentaries. They would study classical texts, preserving the works of ancient Roman authors. Trivium, grammar, rhetoric, logic, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music, formed the bedrock of their education, providing a rigorous intellectual framework. The emphasis on Irish law, history, and poetry was also significant, cementing Clonmacnoise's role as a preserver and cultivator of indigenous Irish culture alongside Christian learning. The Líbhar na Hydra, or the Book of the Dun Cow, though compiled later, is attributed to a scribe from Clonmacnoise, Mael Mór Macilachair, and is one of the earliest surviving manuscripts written entirely in Irish. Contains a collection of significant Irish literary and historical texts demonstrating the monastery's pivotal role in preserving Gaelic learning. Clonmacnoise was not merely an academic institution, it was a spiritual powerhouse and a major pilgrimage site. Pilgrims journeyed from far and wide to venerate Saint Ciaran and to visit the sacred ground. This constant influx of people contributed to the monastery's wealth and prestige, allowing it to invest in magnificent stone monuments. The high crosses at Clonmacnoise, particularly the Cross of the Scriptures, are among the finest examples of early medieval Irish art. These monumental crosses, intricately carved with biblical scenes, figures, and elaborate matwork, served as powerful visual sermons, teaching the illiterate and inspiring devotion. They are enduring testaments to the artistic and theological sophistication of the Clonmacnoise community. Construction of round towers, like the one at Clonmacnoise, was also a hallmark of major Irish monasteries. These towers served as bell towers, places of refuge during raids, and perhaps as symbols of the monastery's power and sanctity. The abbots of Clonmacnoise often wielded considerable political as well as ecclesiastical influence. They were frequently members of powerful royal dynasties, allowing them to forge alliances and protect the monastery's interests. This intertwining of secular and spiritual power was a common feature of early medieval Irish monasticism, and Clonmacnoise was a prime example of its effectiveness. The monastery's wealth and prominence, however, also made it a frequent target for Viking raids from the early 9th century onwards. The annals of Ulster and other chronicles record numerous attacks on Clonmacnoise, leading to destruction, the loss of life, and the plundering of treasures. Despite these devastating raids, Clonmacnoise consistently managed to recover and rebuild, a testament to its enduring strength and its deep roots within Irish society. It continued to flourish as a spiritual and intellectual center for many centuries. Even after the initial waves of Viking attacks, the legacy of Clonmacnoise is immense. It played a critical role in preserving learning during a period of upheaval in Europe. Its scribes saved countless texts, both classical and Christian, ensuring their survival for future generations. Its historians documented the narratives of Ireland, shaping the understanding of its past. Artists created masterpieces that continue to inspire awe. And its spiritual leaders fostered a vibrant tradition of faith that spread throughout Ireland and beyond. The monastery's contribution to Irish identity, through the preservation of language, literature, and history, cannot be overstated. Clonmacnoise stands as a silent city of stone and memory, a powerful reminder of a time when Ireland was a beacon of intellectual light and a testament to the enduring power of knowledge and faith in the face of adversity. Its location, its output, and its lasting cultural impact truly make it one of the most important monastic schools of early medieval Ireland. Number 1. Clonard. Imagine a place that became known as the School of Ireland's Saints. A place so profoundly influential that it shapes the spiritual and intellectual landscape of an entire island, and through its students cast a light far across Europe. This was Clonard, a monastic school founded in the early 6th century by Saint Finian, a figure often hailed as the teacher of the saints of Ireland. Located on the banks of the River Boyne in what is now County Meath, Clonard was not just a monastery. It was an academic powerhouse, a spiritual forge, where some of the most famous figures in early Irish Christianity were trained. Finian himself was a scholar of immense stature. He had studied in Britain, possibly at the famous monastery of St. David in Wales, where he acquired a deep knowledge of Scripture, Latin, and the traditions of the early Christian Church. When he returned to Ireland, he brought with him an ambition to establish a center of learning that would rival any in the Christian world. Clonard was his vision realized. It quickly became the largest and most influential monastic school in Ireland, attracting students from every corner of the island and even from Anglo-Saxon Britain. The sheer number of students was staggering, with some historical accounts speaking of thousands of individuals gathered there, listening to Finian's lectures and immersing themselves in rigorous study. Clonard's curriculum was comprehensive, designed to produce not just devout monks, but highly educated scholars and future leaders of the Church. The core of the studies revolved around the Bible. Students at Clonard engaged in intense biblical exegesis, analyzing Scripture, understanding its nuances, and mastering various interpretive traditions. Latin was the language of all scholarly pursuits, and monks were expected to achieve fluency, not only for reading but also for composing theological treatises, hymns, and chronicles. While specifics about other subjects are less detailed than for some later monasteries, it is clear that the traditional liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music, formed the bedrock of their intellectual training. These subjects provided a robust intellectual framework, honing students' critical thinking skills and their ability to engage in complex theological and philosophical discussions. What truly cemented Clonard's legendary status was its remarkable list of alumni. It is said that the 12 apostles of Ireland were all trained under Saint Finian at Clonard. While the exact historical accuracy of all 12 being direct students at the same time is debated among scholars, the tradition itself highlights the immense influence of Clonard and Finian's teaching. These apostles included figures like Saint Columba of Iona, Saint Brendan the Navigator, Saint Ciaran of Clonmacnoise, Saint Comgall of Bangor, Saint Kevin of Glendalough, and Saint Mobby of Glasnevin. These were not minor figures. They were the founders of other major monasteries and monastic schools that would themselves become vital centers of learning and evangelism across Ireland and beyond. Clonard was in essence the mother school, the intellectual wellspring from which countless other monastic movements originate. Teachings, the scholarly standards, and the spiritual discipline instilled at Clonard were carried by these students to their own foundations, spreading Finian's legacy throughout the island and beyond. The daily life at Clonard would have been rigorous, following the strict monastic rule that Finian himself practiced. Monks and students would have spent their days in cycles of prayer, study, transcription, and communal work. The scriptorium at Clonard would have been a hive of activity, with monks meticulously copying sacred texts, commentaries, and classical works. While very few manuscripts can be definitively attributed to Clonard's early period, the sheer scale of its educational output suggests an immensely productive scribal tradition. These copies were vital for disseminating knowledge and for building the libraries that would serve future generations of scholars. The dedication to preserving and transmitting knowledge was a hallmark of early Irish monasticism, and Clonard stood at the forefront of this effort. Clonard's influence extended beyond its direct monastic foundations. Students became spiritual leaders, abbots, bishops, and missionaries, carrying the intellectual and spiritual flame of Clonard to new communities. The very structure of early Irish monasticism, with its emphasis on powerful independent monastic settlements rather than a rigid diocesan system, was heavily influenced by the model established at Clonard. The interconnections between the various monastic schools often through shared teachers or alumni, formed a powerful intellectual network, with Clonard at its center. This network facilitated the exchange of ideas, texts, and scholars, creating a vibrant intellectual ecosystem unique to early medieval Ireland. Like other wealthy and prominent monastic centers, Clonard eventually faced the relentless challenges of the Viking Age. The Annals of Ulster record several devastating Viking raids on Clonard, beginning in the early 9th century. These attacks led to the destruction of buildings, the plunder of treasures, and undoubtedly the loss of invaluable manuscripts. Such disruptions would have severely impacted the monastery's ability to function at its peak. However, the resilience of Clonard and Irish monasticism in general is evident in its continued existence and influence for many centuries, albeit with periods of decline and rebuilding. The legacy of Finian and his foundational teaching was deeply ingrained, ensuring that Clonard remained a significant spiritual site even through times of immense hardship. Clonard's story is a powerful testament to the enduring power of education and the profound impact a single dedicated scholar can have. It was a place where knowledge was not just preserved, but actively cultivated and disseminated, where future saints and scholars were forged, and where the intellectual light of early medieval Ireland shone brightest. Its role as the School of Ireland's saints is not merely a poetic title. It reflects a historical reality where Clonard truly served as the foundational intellectual nursery for the golden age of Irish learning, sending forth its trained minds to shape the course of history across an entire continent.